What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. Instead of starting off immediately by making another sculpture, I want to talk about this derpy looking, dirt block. This was the first or second sculpture I ever made, and it doesn't look too great, which is why I want to make an updated version that looks way better than this one. But I will give myself a little credit to say that it was my second one, but this one will be much better. Obviously, starting with an aluminum foil square wrapped in clay. What were you expecting otherwise? With the block smoothed into a little bit of a more blocky shape, I can carve out some lines on the top. Said lines will be used to line up the future clay layers, because I want the clay to kinda look like a Minecraft world, like this is a giant chunk and this land on here is like a chunk too. But I didn't size it correctly, so this would be a pretty small chunk or really massive blocks on top. Even though the build just started, I'm gonna already start doing this simple but also repetitive process, because I don't know what you guys expected, but this is a bunch of blocks. But what I can do is use this thinner sheet of clay on top of the slightly thicker clay to make it look like there's a bunch of grass blocks, which is what I can do for several layers, even though I'm struggling to show the camera. And also, even though I am making only grass blocks, I want to give it at least some elevation to make it look a little bit more interesting. Like a flat chunk would just be boring. But something that isn't flat is this goofy looking house that I made. I don't know what scale I was going for, but I think the scale only applied to like 50% of the build, and the other 50% it was just whatever I felt like. Very evident with this house though, because I did not measure out these staired roofs very well, but then again, I don't think anyone clicked on my video to look for actually accurate math, but then again, I don't know. I assume not. With a tiny little door in the front added, that is everything done to make this house, and which I can then put in the giant space that I definitely planned for the house. But because there's an even bigger space in the front that I was actually planning something for, and said thing is a pond, which I can carve out right now. Even though the pond is going to be kind of small, a small pond is better than no pond. This pond right here is going to be for a little Steve that's going to be fishing right next to his house. But something that I noticed is I took out a little bit too much clay and the aluminum foil is showing, so I have to cover it back up with a little bit of clay carefully spread around to cover up the ugly shininess. Now, since I'm talking about ugly parts of the build, I wanted to blend out these lines, because right now the top is close enough to done, even though I will add a little bit more in a minute. But said thing that I'm going to add is this little tree, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a bunch of blobs of clay in a vaguely tree shape, one on top of the hill and one right near the water, because I thought that one tree all by itself would look a little awkward, but two trees is just basically a forest. But the block itself is looking a little bit bland, so I'm going to turn the block that this chunk is sitting on into a gigantic grass block with all these different strips of clay in a random pattern to hopefully make it look, well, random and intentional. I do need to add some textures though, because the base is looking a little bit boring, so I can texture this tree. But I really want to make sure that you guys can see the tree, so can you see it? But I can do the same texture on the roof and the walls of the house as well, because the house is obviously made of wood, before then adding in a teeny tiny little Steve that's going to be fishing in the pond. I'm sorry I couldn't record him, but he is the size of my thumb fingernail, so my hands would have just gotten in the way. I figured it would be a good idea to start by painting the biggest parts of the grass block first, which is this dirt on top and the dirt on the bottom, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's just paint on brush and then brush on model. obviously. I don't think I really need to spell that out though, but whatever. But then I can start painting the house with the same brown because I'm lazy and I think it looks good, before then painting it in a lighter brown to add some variation. And also because most houses, they are different colored from their roofs. Then I can color an even lighter brown the trees because I want to give them some variation as well because it looks better, before then doing an even lighter basically skin color on top to act as some shading, before then going in and painting everything green so it looks like grass instead of snow. And of course, off camera, I made it to be careful of all the edges. Same thing for the trees as well, because I don't want any white showing, and I think this is good enough. But then again, I probably could have gotten a little bit better. But what I can do to cover up my hopeful-ish mistakes is by covering it up in a lighter green to act as grass, I guess. It doesn't really act as grass, but it does act as some nice texture, which makes it look better. And then I can do a similar pattern on the roof, but instead of stippling, it's just brushing to get the paint on the edges. Then I can do the same thing on the front and back side of the houses, but this paint was a little bit lighter than I originally intended, but it just looks like more weathering, so I guess it turned a negative into a positive. With that glued in place, I can do the same stippling motion on the entire dirt block because I figured that'd be good for continuity and whatever. Even though I did forget to show off the building process, I did show off the painting process, which is pretty recognizable, but I still thought that it was important anyway to get at least one, which starts with all the usual colors: blue, a lighter blue, and tan over whatever is necessary, followed by a little extra brown off camera, and then I can glue him in place. And also, don't worry, even though it looks like he's about to fall off, don't worry, because he has this little fishing rod which I can glue unsuccessfully into his hands. After I glued in the fishing rod off camera successfully that time, I can pour in some UV resin, carefully trying not to get it over any of the other details that I had already made. Luckily, I actually didn't, so it's perfectly clean. Now I can spray it with a UV light, and with the UV light curing the resin, I can put in 2 little lily pads, and then it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. And with that done, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.